don't think you miss them. And before you get mad, hear me out. Because I know how annoying it is when somebody tells you that you don't miss them, especially when they are the first thing you think about in the morning and the last thing you think about before sleeping, or the person whose profile you checked more times than you ever admit out loud, or the person whose name still makes your heart do something weird. So, no, I'm not saying that your feelings are unreal. I'm saying I don't think you're missing what you think you're missing. By the way, this is the first video of mine you're watching. Hi, I'm Asa Jane. I'm basically someone who spends way too much time thinking about people, emotions, and all the weird things we do that don't make sense until we really sit down and talk about them. That's what we are going to do today. I was thinking about this recently. Why is that people who gave us the least peace takes up the most space in our mind? Have you noticed that? The people who loved us properly, the people who were consistent, we appreciate them. But the people who left us confused, we literally wrote novels about them in our heads. I don't think that's an accident. I think it's because our mind hate unfinished stories. Okay, imagine two scenarios. Scenario one, a guy says, "Oh my god, you're so amazing, but I don't think we're compatible." Scenario two, a guy disappears without explanation. Now, which one will occupy your mind longer? Obviously, scenario two. Why? Because your brain hates unanswered questions. It is same as imagine you're waiting for this movie to release for a very long time and finally it got released. You're watching the movie, it is going perfectly fine, and then suddenly the screen goes black for 20 minutes before the ending. It pisses the hell out of me. Not because it is the greatest movie ever made, but because you never got the ending. And I think that's what happens with people sometimes. It's not always love. Sometimes it's lack of an ending. Sometimes it's a question or unanswered text. And my personal favorite, the explanation you never got. Your brain keep circling around it, trying to solve the puzzle that doesn't want it to be solved. That's why you can spend months, sometimes years, thinking about someone who wasn't even in your life for that long. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they become unfinished. And unfinished things have a way of living rent free in our minds. I know this because I've done it. Maybe you've done it too. You tell yourself you are over them, but one random Tuesday night, you stalking their profile like you're the biggest stalker. You don't even know what you're looking for, you just looking. Maybe they posted something, maybe they look different, maybe they're miserable, or maybe there's a clue somewhere that will finally make everything make sense. And here's the craziest thing, even when you find something, it never helps. Every single time we look, we leave feeling exactly the same. Because when we say we miss someone, what are we actually missing? Are we missing them, or are we missing the way they made us feel? Because those are not the same thing. I want you to think about someone who you have struggled to let go of. Not the version of them that exists in your memories. The actual person, the real version, the one who left you confused, the one who disappeared when things got difficult. Now ask yourself honestly, would you want that person back? Or would you want the version of them that exists in your head? Because I think a lot of us fall in love with potential, fall in love with almost, and then we spend months grieving a future that never actually happened. I think that's why moving on feels so strange. You're not losing a person, you're losing the life you imagine with them. or the conversation you thought you'd have. And that's a different kind of grief. Nobody really talk about that. People think heartbreak is a missing someone, but sometimes heartbreak is mourning a future. Because how do you get a closure from something that never even happened? And that's the difficult part because you can't. You just slowly learn to accept it. And acceptance is so much less dramatic than people make it seem. It's not waking up one morning and feeling okay. It's more like you checked your profile 3 times today instead of 10, or it's realizing you spent entire afternoon without thinking about them, or hearing their name and feeling slightly less than you did last month. Healing is usually boring, it's small and quiet. And because it's quiet, people often think it isn't happening. But it is. I think one of the biggest mistake we make is believing that moving on means forgetting. It doesn't. You don't forget people who matter to you. You just stop needing them. And those are two different things. There are people I'll probably remember forever. But remembering someone isn't something same thing as wanting them back. And that's the lesson I wish more people understood. Because we mistake familiarity for love. When really sometimes longing is just to prove that we are human. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you're sitting here thinking, okay, but what do I actually do? What do I do when I know I need to move on but I can't? I don't think the answer is forcing yourself to forget them. Because the harder you try not to forget something, the more you think about it. I think the answer is slowly building a life that's bigger than the person you trying to get over. And I know that sounds simple, but think about it. When somebody leaves, they don't just leave empty space in your heart, but they leave empty space in your routine, in your thoughts, in your plans, in your future. And that empty space needs somewhere to go. So don't focus on removing them, focus on adding yourself back in. Learn something, take a course you've been postponing, read books that challenge the way you think, develop a skill, or my personal favorite, watch a K drama or something, or a series of movies. It really helps. All I'm saying is become curious about your own fucking life again. Not because becoming successful will magically heals you, but because healing happens when your life become bigger than your pain. I think that's something people not actually talk about enough. You don't move on because time passes. You move on because when time is passing, you're changing. You are evolving. You you becoming somebody new. And one day you realize something. That person who was devastated by that loss still exists. It just she's not you anymore. She have already learned too much, grown too much, experienced too much. And suddenly the thing that once felt like end of your story become just one chapter. A painful chapter, but still just a chapter, not a whole book. So if you're struggling to move on right now, don't make a goal forgetting them. Make a goal of finding yourself again. Because the strongest people I have ever met weren't the people who never got their heart broken, but they were the people who used heartbreak as a reason to build a life they were excited to wake up to. And eventually, when your life become full of things that inspire you, excite you, challenge you, you stop looking behind you so often. Not because you forced yourself to move on, but because you finally had something worth moving towards. I also heard that rejection affect our self-worth. Because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. Not because they can't let go of the person, but because they can't let go of what rejection actually meant to them. Maybe you have had thoughts like, what did she have that I didn't? Why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I chosen? Why did they choose someone else? These questions seem innocent, but they are actually dangerous. Because hidden inside those questions is an assumption. Assumption that somebody else's decision determined your worth. And it doesn't. Think about how many amazing people you have met in your life. People who are kind, funny, intelligent, talented, people you respected. Now think about how many of those you actually wanted to date. Probably not all of them, right? Not because they weren't enough, just because they weren't your person. And if that's true for you, why do you assume somebody not choosing you means you are not enough? They just made their choice. Maybe that all it was. Not a verdict, just a choice. But when we're hurting, everything feels personal. We take somebody else's inability to love us the way we need it. And we turn it into evidence against ourselves. And that's where the real heartbreak begins. Not when they leave, but when we start abandoning ourselves too, as if becoming someone else's would have changed outcomes. But here's something I have learned: the people who are meant for you don't require you to become smaller. They don't require you to constantly prove your worth, because healthy relationship doesn't feel like convincing. It feels like choosing again and again, and maybe that's why some relationships are so hard to let go of. Not because they were healthy, but because they kept us trapped in the hope that one day we finally be chosen. And hope can be addictive, especially when it's attached to someone. But eventually, you have to ask yourself, how much of my life am I willing to spend waiting? Waiting for a text, waiting for a apology, waiting for a closure, waiting for someone to become who I needed them to be. Because every moment spent waiting for someone else is a moment you're not fully living your own life. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Not that they left, but after they left, they still occupy a space in your mind that belongs to you. And I think that's what healing actually is. Taking the space back, take your energy back, take your attention back, take your future back. And no, it doesn't happen overnight. Someday you'll miss them. Someday you'll romanticize the past. Someday you'll wonder what they are doing. And that's normal. Okay, that's really normal. You are human. But eventually something shifts. One day you'll wake up and realize you haven't checked their profile in a month. One day you'll start wondering if they regret losing you, because you'll be too busy building a life you're proud of. And when that day comes, you'll realize something. You never needed them to choose you. You just needed to choose yourself. And maybe that's this entire journey was trying to teach you all along. Not how to hold on, but how to let go. When honestly, I think that's much more beautiful ending. And maybe that's the thing I want you to remember. You don't have to rush yourself. You don't have to wake up tomorrow completely over it. You don't have to pretend it never mattered or happened. Maybe all you need to do right now is stop treating this chapter like it's your entire story, because it isn't. You were somebody before them, you will somebody after them. And one day, I promise, you look back at this version of yourself with so much compassion. Not because she wasn't hurting, but because she kept going on anyway. And honestly, I think that's something to be proud of. If you enjoyed this conversation, I love for you to stick around. I make videos about psychology, self worth, relationship, and all the thoughts we usually keep to ourselves. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.